What is going on, everybody? Shwazy here, and in today's video we're going to be discussing 8 things that I love and 5 things that I don't on the 2022 Chevy Equinox RS. Okay, so I have had this car for a few days now. I've put just over about 300 miles on it, and I have a pretty good idea on how it drives and what features it comes with. And I figured this would be a very informative video discussing all of the things that I've noticed that I like and some things that I think maybe Chevy could have improved in designing this vehicle. Overall, I've actually been very impressed with this vehicle, and I don't really have very many complaints or things that I quote-unquote hate. But there are some things that maybe could have been done a little bit better. Now, a lot of people get very upset at me when I talk about the things that I quote-unquote hate about the vehicles that I drive. But I do this for a reason, and it's not just to trigger you, I promise. The reason I do this is because I feel like these videos are very informative for potential future car buyers to consider before pulling the trigger and spending $26,000 upwards of $40,000 buying a vehicle, when maybe some of the things that I point out are things you really can't get over. And the same goes for the things that I love about this vehicle. I think if you really like the things that I discuss or the things that I have noticed, then it may be worth looking past some of the things that are not so great about it, because the pros outweigh the cons. Now, if you guys are looking for a comprehensive full car review of this vehicle, I did make that video, and I'm gonna throw it up on the screen right now so you guys can check it out after you finish watching this video. This one just outlines some of the high-level features, but that video dives deep into the interior, exterior, the practicality, and all of the driving dynamics of this particular car. So without further ado, let's start in no particular order with the things that I love, and then at the second part of the video, we'll discuss the things that I don't. Okay, now the first thing that I really love about this vehicle has to do with the looks. Now, unfortunately, the video and photos do not do this vehicle justice. It looks kind of just like a regular run-in-the-mill crossover, but in person, if you had a chance to see one of these, they look a lot better than in photos and videos, especially when you get this facelifted version with the LED headlights and the daytime running lights located up here. And this particular trim level in the RS looks even better, even though it is kind of filthy today because there was a big rainstorm yesterday. But you've got this black chrome accent, the black Chevy badge, the RS, and then I really love how it wraps around, and you've got the black Equinox with these Android gray 19-inch wheels, and then coming out to the back, you again have the RS badging, the blacked out Equinox and all-wheel drive, and the Chevy badge as well. And I really like this particular color. This iron gray metallic color looks really nice, and even though I'm not a fan of super dark colors because not only do they scratch easily, but they get dirty very easily, this one is worth it because the exterior gives off somewhat of a Cadillac-like vibe to it, especially from the front end. And that's something I pointed out in my car review, but it really does look a little bit more premium than just your entry-level crossover. And, you know, looks are subjective, but arguably, I would say this is one of the best looking of all of its competitors. Personally, I really like the Mazda CX-5, but I think this one is right up there with just as good as that vehicle. And the same goes for the interior, although maybe not as nice looking as the exterior. The interior is still a very, very beautiful, nice comforting place to be, and they use really nice materials throughout the cabin. So you've got soft touch over here, even though it's like a cloth-like material. At least you can rest your elbow over here and not get tired, because this is hard plastic, but at least up here it is soft touch. Going over to the seats, you do have full leather seats in this RS trim, and I really love that red stitching that extends all throughout the interior of the cabin, along with the steering wheel as well, which has the red stitching. And then sitting inside, I also really like what they did with the materials inside of the cabin. A lot of places where you place your elbow or perhaps place your hands are soft touch materials, and I particularly really like this RS trim level that continues this red stitching, and you have leather over here and this soft touch. It's not a cloth, but it's not a leather either, but this kind of synthetic material that just makes the interior of the cabin look a little bit more premium, and you carry over the same black chrome accents from the exterior into the inside of the air vents. And then coming down here again, it's a little bit more simple, but it's nice. It doesn't look cheap. It doesn't look like they cut costs anywhere. You've got the RS trim over here as well with the red stitching, and overall just a really nice interior cabin, and it fits well with the exterior styling of this RS trim Equinox. Now, staying inside the motif of the interior, I want to mention this screen being the second thing I really love about this Equinox. I gotta say, even though it's only an 8-inch screen, which seems a little bit small here in 2022, it's pretty much in line with its competitors, so I can't say that Chevy did a bad job at this. I mean, the RAV4 is 9 inches, and then the CR-V I think is 7 inches, so this is pretty much right in between, and overall really not a bad screen. But the one thing I specifically want to point out is how intuitive and responsive this center display is. You've got swipe options just like you would in any other smartphone. It's very quick to respond to different button taps. You've got tons of different audio options from Bluetooth, AM, FM, Sirius XM, all the way to wireless and wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And furthermore, I really like how high def this display is. It kind of goes along with the same thing in the instrument cluster. Even though this is a small 4.2-inch screen, the graphics and the colors on this small display are fantastic. And that is just amplified with this center display over here. You've even got tons of different apps like Alexa, you got Spotify. Really a super intuitive screen with lots of different options, and it has got to be one of the most responsive screens I've used. You also have Wi-Fi compatibility and 4G LTE inside of the cabin. Now, while we're up here, the next feature that I really love about this vehicle has to do with the 360-degree camera. This has got to be one of the best in the industry because you've got so many different angles and options, and you can select them all through just this bottom section of the screen. So, for example, you can do a front view and a back view with the guidelines. You can also do a zoom in feature of just the back or just the front from the bird's eye view angle. So not just from where the actual camera is located, but as if a drone is actually flying above you and showing you that angle. You've got the left and right side with just great clarity and great definition over here. You've also got a direct trailer hitch camera angle view, and I like that it uses the rear view camera, but as you can tell, it actually uses software, or maybe there's another camera, but it actually gives you kind of a top-down view of the exact location of a trailer. And I also really like that there is a trailer guideline. So if you're pulling up to a trailer, you can actually see exactly where the hitch is located, and that is a very useful feature to have if you're backing into a trailer or towing something in the back. And even though the towing capacity is only 1,500 pounds, I still like that they included this as a feature because it's still nice to have. So all in all, my kudos to Chevy for creating a fantastic 360-degree camera system, and I would definitely recommend you get this as an option on your Equinox. Now, for the next feature that I love about this vehicle, we're going to have to jump into the back seats, and that has to do with the fact that this vehicle comes with rear air vents. That is something that isn't always common on a vehicle of this price point and this compact crossover segment, and I'm really glad that Chevy included these in the back of the vehicle. And furthermore, the fact that they are so high up off the ground. Sometimes you have rear air vents where it's blowing pretty much down at your feet and it doesn't really serve a purpose. Whereas here, you've almost got them above the knee level, so you're actually able to feel it on your face. That is a very nice feature, and my kudos to Chevy for being able to do that. And I also like that because it's a little bit higher, they've actually cut down some of the center console over here, so you can actually still fit a human body in this middle seat without pretty much sacrificing that for the sake of having air vents. Now, the next thing I love about this vehicle has to do with the fact that this vehicle does not come with a transmission tunnel located in the second row. Now, I know that some crossovers don't have this, but as an example, my 2018 Toyota RAV4 did have a small little hump located right behind the center arm console for the transmission tunnel, and this vehicle does not. It is a completely flat load floor, and this feature makes it a lot easier for passengers to sit in this center seat in the back of this 5-passenger SUV and not have to split your feet between the left and the right side and kind of invade into your passengers. So I can actually truly see 5 people fit in the back of this vehicle comfortably, and I've actually had firsthand experience where I had 3 full-grown adults sitting back here not really complaining because there's enough legroom to fit 3 people back here. Now, the next feature I really love about this vehicle is that it does have an adjustable lift gate. And not only that, but this lift gate adjustment is actually located in the front row seat. And that is a little different than some other crossovers where you actually have to adjust the lift gate on the actual lift gate itself, which kind of defeats the purpose, because if you're parking in an area with a low ceiling, it's nice to have that functionality in the front row so you know you can set it to either 3/4 or turn it off completely so that you don't damage the lift gate when you're parked in a low ceiling area. Now, the next thing I love about this vehicle is how smooth the auto start stop feature is on this car. This has got to be one of the quietest start stop features I've ever experienced in any automobile. And I also really like the fact that since it's so quiet, it shows you whether the vehicle is actually off or if it's in the auto start stop mode. And I also like the fact that as of 2022, they're giving you the option to turn that feature off. And as you can tell, the vehicle turned back on, but you probably couldn't tell on camera because it's such a quiet system. Chevy did a fantastic job, and it's gotta be one of the quietest in the industry. Now, the next thing I really love about this vehicle is its ride quality. I have been very impressed with how comfortable this vehicle rides down the road. And furthermore, I've been very impressed with the interior sound quality. This is a very, very quiet cabin, and I gotta say, this car is perfect for road trips or daily driving. Now, like I may have mentioned earlier, I used to own a 2018 RAV4, and that vehicle was not rough by any means, but in comparison with this vehicle, that car rode a lot rougher. I gotta say, I think the ride quality of this vehicle is more comparable to a luxury crossover than an entry-level crossover. It just soaks up bumps very well and does a great job driving down the road. Okay, now for the part of the video where I'm going to get roasted in the comments, and that's 5 things that I don't necessarily like about this vehicle. It's really just constructive criticism. It's not me dissuading you from buying this car, but things you should consider. So in no particular order, the first thing that I think Chevy should have done a little bit better is improving the headrest. Now, this vehicle is brand new. It has less than 2,000 miles, but this headrest is extremely hard. I equated this to plywood in my car review, and I really think it's accurate. Now, the headrest actually looks really nice. It's got red stitching. It is adjustable, but the firmness itself is a little bit too firm for my liking. Now, I personally don't really lean back on the headrest that much, so it's not really that noticeable. So it depends on how you drive. But if you are planning on leaning back on this headrest, you may have a little bit of complaints because it's a pretty hard surface. I'm not asking for a Mercedes-Benz S-Class pillow headrest quality, but I'm just asking for it to be a little bit more padded than it is. Now, we had talked about that one of the things I love about this vehicle is this 360-degree camera, but what I don't like, or one of the things I dislike about this vehicle, is the fact that there is no direct camera button. There's no button down here to be able to quickly open up that application, and no button over here. So if you are pulling into a tight parking spot, you kind of have to shuffle around real quick to figure out where exactly is this app located to be able to pull it up. And sometimes it would be really nice to just have a button that you can push to quickly open up that functionality. That is one thing that I wish Chevy did include on this vehicle, and it would probably be pretty easy to add this button somewhere over here in this general area. Speaking of this general area, even though I really like the ride quality of this vehicle, like I mentioned earlier, one thing I wish this vehicle came with is some sort of driving modes. Now, I know most cars, even my 2018 Toyota RAV4, had several different driving modes from eco to normal to sport. unfortunately, this vehicle does not have any other functionality. The only thing you really can do is put it into the L mode where you can actually manually shift this vehicle, but it's not necessarily a sport mode per se. It just kind of gives you added functionality of the automatic transmission. I wish there was a sport mode button or an eco mode button, because even though they don't make a huge difference, I did notice a difference in my RAV4. The sport button made the throttle a little bit more active. It kept the RPM in the optimal range to have the most amount of horsepower and torque, and I was able to accelerate and pass people better on the freeway in sport mode than in regular mode. Opposite of that, eco mode also made a difference, where I was able to achieve over 30 plus miles per gallon in eco mode on a road trip by just pushing a button in the center console. So I do wish that Chevy included some form of a sport or eco or even an off-road mode, especially considering this is the Rally Sport or RS edition. So it's supposed to be a little sportier looking, and I just wish it would behave a little bit sportier with having some of that additional functionality. Now, for the next thing that I hate about this vehicle, I'm going to try to show you on video, but it's sometimes hard to replicate this kind of stuff through a video because you're not actually sitting in the environment. What I mean by this is this vehicle comes with the premium 7-speaker Bose audio system, and overall it's a very nice system. I am not knocking Bose or its sound quality, but I wish the speakers were positioned a little bit differently than they are. Now, I am not an audiophile, but I noticed this from the very beginning sitting in this car and listening to the radio. It does seem like the sound is biased towards the front. And so it almost seems like the audio is coming from the front end and reaching back towards you rather than engulfing you 360 degrees with good audio. I think part of the reason why is because you have 3 speakers located on the dashboard, you've got an additional 2 in the door, and you've only really got 2 speakers in the back seats. And so as a result of that, more noise comes out of the front, and it just doesn't sound as good as having 360 degree sound. Now, the nice thing is you can change where the direction of the sound is coming from. So you can make it more rear biased. But when I tried doing this, it just seemed like it lowered the volume from the front speakers and didn't really add to that 360 feel that I was going for. Now, for the last thing that I hate about this vehicle, has to do with the fact that this vehicle is just around $36,000 and it does not have any form of sunroof. I just feel like Chevy should have probably included a base version of a sunroof at 36 grand. So I really appreciate the fact that they give you a giant panoramic sunroof for the Premier trim, which is really uncommon for entry-level compact crossovers. So that's a huge plus for Chevy. But I feel like they should have thrown in at least a regular sunroof on an RS trim or maybe even the LT trim, just because sunroofs are kind of nice to have and pretty common on other entry-level compact crossovers. And at $36,000, it's kind of hard to justify not having a sunroof when you have luxury touches like leather steering wheel and leather seats and an 8-inch infotainment touchscreen. I just don't really get why they wouldn't throw in a regular sunroof. So there you have it, everybody. Those were the 8 things that I love and 5 things that I don't love about the 2022 Chevy Equinox RS. Now, overall, like I said in my review, I have been very impressed with this vehicle. If you are in the market for a compact crossover, I think you'd be silly not to try to test drive this vehicle and see if some of the things I mentioned in today's video are deal breakers or maybe convince you to purchase this vehicle. I totally understand why Chevy sells so many of this vehicle year over year, because it really is a good bargain and competes very well against the likes of the Honda CR-V and the Toyota RAV4. So I hope today's video gave you some additional information for you to use in your car shopping process. If this is your first time stopping by, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Feel free to follow me on all of the social media at Schwazy_. I'll put the links down in the description below. And as always, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay Schwazy, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.